We're on number 81, the narrative fallacy.
The narrative fallacy, also the fable, the poster child. The ancient fallacy of persuasion by telling a heartwarming or horrifying story or fable, particularly to less educated or uncritical audiences who are less likely to grasp purely logical arguments or general principles. Example, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Narratives and fables, particularly those that name names and personalize arguments, tend to be far more persuasive at popular level than other forms of argument and are virtually irrefutable, even when the story in question is well known to be entirely fictional. This fallacy is found even in the field of science, as noted by a recent 2017 scientific study. Link in the description. Um, the narrative fallacy. Yeah, this is interesting. We've talked about how fallacies are neither good nor bad, they just are. Um, I use narrative and what would I call this? I would say like parables often. In the work that I do, I find that there are some, like if I'm trying to help someone comprehend emotional information, I find that comprehending emotional information in the mind is like I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's like just because I tell someone that the reason they're acting a certain way is because they were beaten by their dad at this age, that doesn't solve the emotional experience they have of the thing. And so, like an example, there was someone who was on a group call in my community, and they were voicing that they felt really resistant to trusting the group and trusting the space. And I said, well, I was like, let me tell you a story. And I said, there was once this girl who loved everyone in the world and wanted everyone to be happy. But then one day, as they were in their house, they got a really loud knocking at the door that was startling and scary. And the voice at the door was yelling and screaming, "Get out here! If you don't get out here right now, I'm gonna come in and kill you!" And I said, and of course, the girl never answered the door. But here was the problem is that that man came knocking at the door 20 days in a row, saying the same thing every single day to the point where the girl decided to go run in the corner of her house and cry and hide. On the 21st day, a gentle knock on the door came, and it was a Girl Scout cookie who just wanted to, or a Girl Scout who just wanted to give Girl Scout cookies. And I said to the person I was talking to, I was like, what do you think the girl did? Do you think she went and answered the door? And the person was like, "Oh, I don't know." I said, "She didn't. She didn't answer the door because she was afraid because for the last 20 days, someone came to her door screaming and yelling, saying they were going to kill her. In fact, it took the Girl Scout gently knocking and coming to the door for 40 days before finally the girl decided to open up the door." And the whole purpose of that story that I told in that moment was to appeal to this person's emotional experience to help them to understand just because they're afraid, there's probably a reason for it, and it's okay that they don't feel ready to open right now. But if I had just said that verbatim, it might not have landed in the same way. And that person ended up having a wow moment, and they were able to break through some things and release and have some tears, and it was really beautiful, and everyone held space for them. But I found that oftentimes, I use narrative often when I feel like the information that I'm trying to get across is would be so conflicting or so volatile that logic won't work and it will require a different medium. So that's where I use this fallacy pretty frequently, actually.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea because in that story, it's basically to say um, you should do things with reason. And at the beginning of the story, she has a lot of reason to not open the door, and then over time, she progressively gets more reason to open the door. And so, and that's all the narrative is. So, but it doesn't make the fable true,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, but uh, yeah, so I think that's the positive thing about narratives is that they can help you to a reasonable conclusion, hopefully most of the time. Um, and I do know a couple narratives that I pointed out before, like in Life of Pi. While I still love the movie, it's a the narrative is a uh, the thesis, the theme is a fallacy. It's argument of appeal to consequence.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so
Got it.
that's what I would say for narrative fallacy. That we also covered this when it came to argumentum ad mysterium. That this I would say this would fall into the umbrella of argumentum ad mysterium. That simply just art itself is just because you can tell the story and get something across in art doesn't make the thesis of that art true just by default.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
So
because it's a good
yeah,
story doesn't mean that it's actually true. Yeah, I totally get that.
or it could even be a really fantastic tale like Life of Pi, but the thesis could still be false. Like the lesson to be learned is not a good lesson. So, anyways, yeah, that's narrative fallacy.